in the yoga world, you see this old image of the monkeys with the palms over their eyes and then their ears and their mouth, like see no evil, hear no evil, speak no evil. And so I think what happens is it becomes like this navel gazing thing where I'm very internal and I'm not subject to the fluctuation of the external world.
Cheetah Vritti Narodaha.
Narodaha, yeah. So stop the fluctuations of the mind. But I would say, like, see the world and stop the fluctuations of the mind. Look in the mirror and stop the fluctuations of your mind. Look inside and stop the fluctuations and the constant judgment. I mean, we are creatures of constant judgment. And I think what happens is, like, as you look at yourself more and more in the mirror, in the video,
lose the judgment.
It goes away. It's just factual. It's just neutral. Because I'm not like, well, how does my hair look right now? It's like, well, how does my arm rotating right now? And I'm not paying any attention to the other stuff. It doesn't matter. That's not what this is about, to assess the situation. It's about the nuts and bolts of what's happening, not how it looks.
Right. So we did the Instagram post, which I think I want to do every day, because I said, can you guess what pose we're talking about when we're talking about, how we talk about our poses? And you should see if you can guess what pose we're talking about, because today
we're talking about Utkatasana.
Yeah, and I'm Jane.
I'm Sarah.
And we're the yoga posers. And this is one of my least favorite poses.
Wow.
I hate this pose. Until this week. I'm serious.
They're all redeemed.
I dug so deep into this pose.
Yeah.
And then all my students had to do it. And I found a way for this to feel really good.
Nice.
I know.
I bet you can't wait to hear more. I feel like it's the culmination of all of our previous episodes. I feel like all the talking points for all the previous episodes culminate in the squat, where I would have thought like a squat is the first one and then everything else builds from that. And you could certainly do it that way too. But everything we've talked about will come to a head in this pose, this fierce pose.
Fierce pose. All right. So Utkatasana, what are the different names? We got chair pose, fierce, awkward pose, I've heard it called.
Lightning bolt or
something like that.
Because you make the zigzag with your body.
Yeah.
The angle of the shin and the angle of the torso, keeping those about the same, parallel to one another. Viewing it from the side, that lightning bolt is more visible. Squat.
Really?
Yeah, it's a squat.
Well, it is a squat. That's a good point.
Yeah. And I think it's like one of the only functional poses in yoga.
That's so funny, because when I was doing the class this week, I prepped people with a squat.
Same thing.
Utkatasana.
I guess your arms are, a little more yoga-ish.
Yeah. Utkatasana was my peak pose, which was hysterical.
Yeah. I did candy cane this week as the peak pose, building on Utkatasana.
Yeah.
Candy cane with a bent standing knee.
Okay. I like that. When you say candy cane, you mean like half moon with a back bend where you bend your knee and reach back and grab it?
Quad stretch, yeah.
Okay, cool. So on the symbolism, it means powerful and also refers to a raised chair. So like the chair royalty would sit on.
Oh, I thought you meant like a baby chair.
No.
Like a high chair.
Not like a high chair, like a royal chair. And in this pose, the revered person on the raised seat is our true self. And that is revealed as we awaken the personal power we need to transform obstacles into opportunities for learning. So the pose is hard. And the more effort that I place into the foundation of the pose, the more I can expand and grow upward like we did in tree. And that's what I realized was missing in all my Utkatasanas until then, is I was just always like, oh, can I get a deeper hinge in my hips? Can I, why can't I get down lower? I ignored getting down lower. I just made sure my feet were, all the stuff we've been talking about. And then I stretched up and I was like, oh, this feels great.
Yeah.
And then it was such a good reminder that life is really, really hard, but it's being in the hard stuff that gives us the opportunity to grow and grow spiritually. And then there's this choice that we're given. Are we going to be in the discomfort of the experience, or are we going to learn from it? So, yeah, it's been really fun to play with.
Yeah, I think a big part of this pose is endurance, especially in my favorite way in a yoga class is turning it into a wall sit. Let's all sit. You can sit for 30 seconds. You can sit for a minute. You can come out whenever you want to. People come in and out, and you can just see the breaking point and the decision make, like the battle inside of when they should come out. And that's when your weight is offloaded onto the wall. So endurance, yeah. Exercise helps us endure the trials of life.
The top complaints with Utkatasana are, this is really uncomfortable on my knees. It totally kills people's low back. And then they can't breathe. Really uncomfortable in the neck and shoulders. And then their legs shake and they can't hold the pose, so it makes them feel crappy.
Yeah, I think I've heard the knee and the can't hold the pose as long as I want to. The other ones I haven't really heard.
Well, you definitely see people doing it and they don't breathe. Yeah. So all these concerns, all these reasons why people find this pose uncomfortable are valid. It's hard.
Right. So you're going to need some good ankle dorsiflexion.
Yeah.
I definitely want to talk about the ankles today. And I want to talk about the analogy of how we scissor the legs in yoga. You could think of scissoring the legs open and closed, the front leg and the back leg, but there's also a scissoring that happens between the thigh and the shin of each leg. So operating those dynamics where the pivot of the scissor is the knee, working that posterior chain, working the anterior chain. Those are different ways to get at some of the work in the leg. And we had talked about Warrior 2. When you're feeling it all in your thighs, you're not accessing that posterior chain.
Right.
And then we talked about the low lunge, the importance of getting the knee beyond the ankle in a safe, controlled way.
Right.
In order to improve, as you had mentioned, Jane, dorsiflexion, knee flexion, hip flexion, all of those.
All of them.
See, all the poses are coming back together and into this one, Utkatasana.
Yeah. And the feet. That's what I was playing with this week. You start in Tadasana and then you bring the knees forward. And when you do that, the weight comes into the toes. And then you hinge at the hips and reach the pelvis back. And that brings your weight back towards the heels. And you do that until you find center. And then you're like, okay, I got my feet. And you want to press into the feet. We want to be rooting into the feet, which activates all the muscles in the lower body. That's our forward fold, right? And then the upper body is in a back bend. But in order to hinge your hips back, there's a good chance I will have a pretty slack low belly, right? And my pelvis will have a forward tilt to it that is too much for a back bend, right? So I have to use the low belly and the top of my butt to bring my pelvis back up, right? So that means I'm lifting the pelvis away from the thighs, but I'm still trying to keep the hinge in the knees and the hips, and my feet are stable and balanced. And then once I've got the core, the lower core, organizing my pelvis, then I pull the ribs up away from the navel. I try to get my torso so long. I bring my arms up overhead, so we'll have to prep for that. And if I'm lucky, lengthen the back of the neck and gaze up at my fingers. And then it's like, oh my God, that's a nice pose.
And here's where we get into like the different kinds of Utkatasanas. So there's the Ashtanga Utkatasana, which is you're starting with the knees bend forward and you're in that more of a vertical torso, which can turn into a back bend. Or you're doing more of what I would say is like a functional squat. Your torso is not vertical, it's hinging forward. And there's pluses and minuses to whether the torso is more vertical, if it's leaning forward, and then certainly if you want to do it in kind of a back bendy way. You're just getting into different effects with different variations of the pose. And personally, I would try to get everyone into neutral spine as best as possible. And I would want most people to be angled slightly forward.
This pose obviously has a lot of ways you can modify it and use it differently. Yeah. But, you know, the one that I was talking about where you got a forward fold and a back bend, my understanding is that's the pose that you would find in light on yoga. You're like, I don't care.
I don't care at all.
You don't care.
I want it to be as functional as possible. And once you introduce that back bend, shit show.
It is a shit show. But I'm just saying, I figured it out this week after, well, I started practicing in 1982. So how many years did it take me to feel good in that pose?
Everybody likes certain poses and hates other poses. And it really is cool when you get to like,
you're like, oh my God.
You come to my side pose. And you're like, I like you now. You're good.
Okay. So I'm going to let go of my attachment on this image that was presented to me somewhere in time. So goodbye.
Right. I mean, we can certainly talk about it. Maybe we should just do a broad sweep through the pose.
Yeah, let's
just do that. So the ankles are dorsiflexing, the knees are flexing, the hips are hinging, the spine is either neutral or go ahead and take it into a back bend. We don't care. You do whatever you want.
Well, the back bend should be a thoracic back bend. It's in the upper body because you have anterior tilt when you hinge at the hips.
You have neutral pelvis when you hinge at the hip. Let's look up a picture of this pose, this version of it. So that if I have an image in my head and you have an image in your head.
No, but we got to talk about this neutral pelvis because we've gotten stuck on the pelvis before. Like the pelvis theoretically is neutral. You're just tipping the torso forward or back. But we use
you're in hip flexion.
Yeah, you're in hip flexion.
And then the tilt is something different. And so because you've hinged at the hip, theoretically, if the
pelvis stays the same.
If the spine is staying neutral, then everything's angled forward. Here's what you're thinking of.
Yeah.
They've got their hips flexed. And then they've got lumbar curve and a lot of thoracic curve and a cervical curve.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Different applications. But it was really fun because it had this great story, same story we had in tree pose, that the foundation of the pose has to actively root. You know, from the pelvis down, you are actively rooting. And then from above the pelvis, you are growing, you're rising, you're lifting, you're opening up to possibility, all that stuff. So it's very much like tree pose in that way.
Totally. This is a double-legged tree pose. With a zigzaggy tree. We've all seen those zigzaggy trees. And where the weight ends up in your feet gives you good information as to what muscles are going to work. You're going to feel a lot more in your quads the more the weight goes towards the toes. So I would say try to shift that weight to the heels and drive down through the heels because you want the gluteals supporting this much hold, this length of hold.
So then that's fun because you get to fine tune, just like we've been talking about with the feet and the pelvis. The feet are the pelvis, right? So where the weight is distributed on the feet is going to inform where you're experiencing the pose through your lower body, probably up higher too, frankly. And I think being super aware of your feet is helpful, right? So is it in my toes? Is it in my outer? Am I supinating or pronating? Am I back on my heels? And the way I was playing with it this week was to make sure that my feet were equal, front to back.
Yeah, centered.
Yeah.
Right. I would say a lot of people are coming in very quad dominant, very front body dominant. And so my focus has been
get it back
as much as you can and see how it reduces the quad work so significantly that I feel like you can hold this pose for a much, much longer time. And then it translates into these open stance poses and these single leg poses where if we get this dormant side to wake up, and the endurance is there.
Right. It is frequently taught, toes together, heels slightly apart. I can't tell you how many times I've said that. Bend the knees, drop your hips down, reach your fingertips to the sky. I probably say that all the time. Get your ankles underneath your hips.
Yeah.
More than like coming together, because if you come together, especially if you have wider hips, then you're creating this internal angle on your thigh bone that does not serve you.
And maybe they do that because it's a back bend. So they're really trying to load the front body in order to balance you to back bend as much as possible in that version. So I could say like, okay, well, maybe that's why they do it.
I'm going to go back to patriarchy. I just think it's a bunch of guys without wide hips.
And this is where over the centuries, right, like how the Bible started out, like virgin just meant like a young woman who was not married. And then it became like, she's never had sex either.
Right.
Is the translation, the Q became the pose, which was such the confusion for me for so many years is I thought the Q was the final shape. And so if you're starting really froggy legged, go ahead, like bring your knees together, widen your heels, might get someone more parallel and more neutral. But then that became like, well, that's the pose. And so now knees are touching and heels are drawn apart, which for certain body types, totally okay. But again, the cue is what's the final shape?
Yeah.
And to be as functional as possible for ordinary people, we're thinking like outer hip distance, knees tracking over middle toes, like, because just getting to there is a big achievement.
That is a big achievement.
If you can get to there, then go ahead and play with like other things. But it's going to be a long project to get the majority of students just to what should be considered a normal start.
And it's so interesting because all the work we did to prepare in tree pose is the same work we need to do here. Because we need the abductors fired up. We need the adductors fired up. We need the quads. We need the hamstrings. We need the calves. We need all of the musculature in our lower body to be stabilizing our skeleton, our bones, so that when we move, they're not collapsing in, they're not falling out. We're getting the benefit of this posture, which is really, it's a stabilizing pose. This is one of the ones that creates a lot of stability, a lot of strength.
Yeah, this reminds me so much. It just flashed me back to the old school way of training people how to ride horses. So I used to be a horse trainer back in the day. That was my first career. And like old school pure state, endless money, endless time, and a horse that can be on a lunge line for an hour. As a rider, you were not allowed to pick up the reins until you had developed your seat. So like, you would ride without reins for a year. You were never allowed to touch the horse's mouth. You see a beginner, like, and they're so unstable in their base.
Yeah.
And they're relying on their arms and they're balancing on the horse's mouth. And it's just so brutal to watch. And so it's like, nope, you can't. You could hold onto the saddle if you want with your hands until you start to find your seat. Then eventually you let go with your hands. You're able to balance. And then you earn the privilege of picking up the reins and touching the horse's mouth.
Everything's connected. It is.
Yeah. You need the base. And what are they doing for the rider there? It's all pelvic tilt. It's all hip strength, leg strength, balance, release, not too much effort, not too sloppy.
I talked to my psychic this week. I need some psychic energy support. But she said, she talks to, my guides. And they basically said, based on what you've done to your body, if you had not been practicing yoga this way,
you'd be fucked.
You'd be so fucked. Yeah. Because I cracked my neck when I was a kid. I've, anyway, lots of stuff.
I went to that neurologist because they were like, well, we think that you might have issues with your blood pressure because you have some hypermobility. I was like, duh. That's what I've been saying. We're like, well, we need you to go to the neurologist and have this extensive testing done on the tilt table and all this to confirm that. Right. And,
or I could do down dog and come up quickly.
And they're like, part of the test, they're like, well, I want you to breathe. And I was like, well, how? She was like, because she was like, take some deep breaths. I'm like, well, wait a second. Do you mean don't hold my breath? Yeah. I can breathe fast, slow, normal, deeply. Do you want a natural breath?
Threefold.
Yeah. 3-part breath on the tilt table.
Cooling, heating. What do you want?
Such a pain in the ass as a patient.
I know.
No, but and then, a large part of it is just like waiting. You just wait there on the tilt table. And the neurologist was like, no, you'd be in a really bad place without the yoga. Because I was like, maybe the yoga's made this worse.
That's cool.
He's like, no, you're much better off. With your hypermobile, you have such diminished proprioception. And like we had talked about, yoga people who stretch, their sensation seekers. No, we're just trying to find any information.
Where's the boundary?
To tell us where we are.
Yeah.
And I think that these poses done well are setting up some rock solid boundaries in your foundation. Here's the limit. Here's the limit. Don't go past that. And now there's ease and strength and endurance.
That's so exactly what this pose is.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's why the effort is hard. The effort in life is hard. And it's through hard effort.
Mentally hard. Mentally more than physically.
It can be both. But you're right.
I mean, it is, but even the physical stuff is a mental
game.
A mental game.
Yeah, because it's all connected. But right. But it's the effort is the path. The effort is the path.
Right. And the trend in yoga right now is release your efforting. Everyone's working too hard and trying too hard. And I would say you're just trying the wrong way. Like, can you scale back the efforting in the wrong directions, in the wrong places that are already overtaxed? You have all these resources that you didn't know you had. Find these, learn how to distribute the work. Anna Forrest, there's a story that a yoga teacher told me who did her teacher training. And she was like, okay, you're going to hold wheel pose as long as you can. And so like this man is in wheel pose, the full back bend on hands and feet, trembling, crying. And she's like, just hold it for 30 seconds more. And she's like with him and she's like, I'm with you. And just like 30 seconds more. And she like counts it down. She's like 5 more seconds. And then she gets to the very end and she's like, now just 1 minute more. And it like broke him, And I think that her as an addict coming to this practice to purge the demons. Her trainings were all about challenging and finding your edge of what you think your capacity
And
is.
going beyond.
And then going beyond. And she was like, now distribute the work somewhere else in wheel pose. Why is it all in your shoulders or in your wrists? Make your legs work. Shift your weight around. Play, make your quads work. Make your butt work. Like make your calves work. Like lift your toes. Just distributing that work all over the body and seeing how long you can last. And like that has no functional value for any ordinary people, but it goes to like, you have undiscovered resources, find them.
Yeah. Yeah. And also, like you were talking about, it's like the containment.
Right.
You know, even if you have stability, you want it to be active, balanced, and functional. You know, often people with a lot of stability are, many of us are imbalanced. So they might be super stable in one part of the body and kind of disengaged in the other part of the body. Well, the easier part to work with takes over.
Which we'll see with the knees coming in, the feet pronating, most typically the pelvis tilting too anteriorly, getting too much back bend in this, getting all the work at close to the knee in the quad instead of distributed through the belly of the quad. Those are all signals and signs that you're not optimally aligned in this pose.
Ooh. So when you were talking about the pelvis anteriorly tilting a little bit too much, that's the number one cue that you're going to be dumping in your back. Those are the people whose low back hurts. And the knees are going to hurt if you're in your knees, right? If you can be in your feet and your quads and your calves and the glutes, have all of this stuff really working for you, the joints aren't going to be bearing the brunt of it.
Right. If the knees are taking it, is your core engaged? No. Oh, well, you didn't tell me. Well, I gave you 6 other cues.
Inner thighs, get those fired up.
And just shift your weight to your heels and zip up your belly.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then if in doubt, if nothing else is working, a block between the thighs.
Yeah.
Because that helps trigger the pelvic floor and the abdominals.
Well, you've said something that I use all the time now, like, well, if your back's hurting, you're using your back. If your knees are hurting, you're using your knees.
Yeah, wherever it hurts, that's the part doing the work. And the body's like, I'm overworking.
Yeah. So it's information.
And then you just have to, play with your pelvic tilt, play with shifting your weight, ask your teacher to look at you. Please ask your teacher to look at your pose.
Yeah.
Don't guess. Look in a mirror.
I really struggle with mirrors in classes. Mostly because I get distracted on myself. But I work in one studio where they have this really lovely sheer curtain that goes across a wall of mirrors. And I tell people, please, if you like mirrors, open it up for yourself. I prefer a soft gaze where I can't see shit too clearly.
I mean, for me, COVID really opened up this opportunity as a teacher because I had the monitor.
Yeah.
And I used a really big monitor attached to my laptop so I could see students. Because I wanted to be able to see their practice. But then I was like, oh, I could see myself too. And I was like, oh.
Yeah.
This doesn't look like I thought it looked. And then it was incredibly good feedback, again, for those of us operating at a proprioceptive deficit. Are you doing what you're thinking you're doing? And everyone's like, well, yoga is this internal practice. And I'm like, because it's not about how you look. And it is an internal practice. It's like trust but verify. I'm going to trust what I'm feeling, but I'm also going to verify.
So yoga is an internal practice. And I definitely know that the more I practice and the more I broaden the application of the practice, right? So when I was young, the practice was, I think Dick Van Dyke has this great thing, like when I was 30, I exercised to look good. And when I was 40, I exercised to do this. And, then I was exercising to stay alive. And now I'm exercising because I am alive. But sometimes you can be in the practice and not pay attention to the details. Sometimes your body can accommodate that. I think as I've gotten older, that does not serve me at all. It probably didn't serve me when I was younger, but I didn't pay a price right away. But if I do poses inefficiently or in a way that harms something, it has a price, right? So I need to be in my body and I need to be paying attention to it. And as I pay attention on this really discerning level, then I become more connected and intimate with myself as a system and learn how to take better care of myself when things come out of balance.
Right. In the yoga world, you see this old image of the monkeys with the palms over their eyes and then their ears and their mouth, like see no evil, hear no evil, speak no evil. And so I think what happens is it becomes like this navel gazing thing where I'm very internal and I'm not subject to the fluctuation of the external world.
She'd have reading Rodha.
Narodaha, yeah. So stop the fluctuations of the mind. But I would say, like, see the world and stop the fluctuations of the mind. Look in the mirror and stop the fluctuations of your mind. Look inside and stop the fluctuations and the constant judgment. I mean, we are creatures of constant judgment. And I think what happens is, like, as you look at yourself more and more in the mirror, in the video,
lose the judgment.
It goes away. It's just factual. It's just neutral. Because I'm not like, well, how does my hair look right now? It's like, well, how does my arm rotating right now? And I'm not paying any attention to the other stuff. It doesn't matter. That's not what this is about, to assess the situation. It's about the nuts and bolts of what's happening, not how it looks.
Right. No, that's very cool. And you're right.
This should be on our Guess the Pose thing. We'll be talking about Chichivriti.
Yeah.
Narodaha.
We're going to just like guess the pose. Who knows what the hell they're talking about?
It all ties in. You want this stuff too, don't you?
Yeah.
It's not just about like the mechanics.